With that, good evening, everyone. I hope you're doing great. I'm Tanvi from Cyberblog India team, and I will be the host for the evening. This is our 11th Instagram live session as an up to our 2022 conference titled Abuse and Harassment in Cyberspace Beyond the Perceived Notions of Mainstream. This conference seeks to initiate discussion on the threats faced by the LGBTQIA+ community members on the internet, to facilitate sharing of niche stories and first-hand experiences of community members, and to raise awareness about the challenges faced by the community while dealing with cybercrime incidents. To know more about the conference, I request you to follow our Instagram page or drop a text on our helpline number, which you can find in the contact details area. For today's session, we have Mohammed. Mohammed is a master's student of Molecular and Cellular Biology from Ramaiah University of Applied Sciences, Bangalore. They work part-time with UN Women as Safe Space Coordinator, where they're responsible for creating, designing, and rehabilitating safe spaces. Their work is exclusively around queer refugees based in the Middle East and North Africa. They're also one of the co-founders of Intersex Human Rights India, IHRI, is a platform meant to raise and support intersex people in India by amplifying their voices and granting them visibility. Mohammed is also a human book with Human Library Bangalore, where they extensively talk about abuse, queer safety, and structures that work around it. In their free time, you will find them in lab fiddling with micro-organisms and getting awed with new instruments. As an intersex person, they've highlighted the medical fraternity's harassment of the intersex community in India. Mohammed is also a co-admin of Queer Campus Bangalore, a safe space meant exclusively for young queers in colleges and working, to receive support and safe space to hang out. Thank you so much, Mohammed, for coming to this conference with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, if you think I've missed out on something, please go ahead and add it.
Oh my God, I feel overwhelmed right now. Introduction to me, I get very flustered and like very conscious of myself. I'm like, okay, did I really do that? Did I also do that? Oh yes, I did do that. It's a reminder to yourself, like be humble, but also seep in the attention that you need.
And be proud of yourself, more importantly.
Yeah, of course, definitely. It's taken a lot of work. It's taken a lot of visibility to get out there, and it's also challenged a lot of structures that work around it. So yes, we should definitely take pride in ourselves for doing that.
Absolutely. Okay, so before we go forward into very, very cyberspace-based issues, I want to know, how did your journey on the internet start?
Ooh, that's super interesting. I remember because this is when I was in 5th standard, and internet was a luxury, I believe. It was something that people have not heard of, and this was 5th standard. I don't remember the year properly. This must have been 2007-8, I guess. And I'm that ancient to people watching. I am very ancient person to say that I discovered internet in 26, 27. So I think it was those days of connecting your telephone cord to the internet and waiting for the beep line to happen, and then you can't use the telephone simultaneously when you're using the internet. And internet was so new that you had these books called Computer for Dummies and things like that, and your CPU worked separately. Then you had your mouse, and that mouse had a rotating ball inside it. And I am that old and from that era of generation of computers. So I believe I was in 5th standard when we got our first computer, and we also had a printer, which was seen as a huge achievement in our house, because that meant that we could literally print anything out of the internet. And although very restricted things, but you still could print out things, and that would come out in images. And I would use that extensively for my school projects to stand out. So I remember doing that, and I was like, look, I have a color printer at my house. The color printer meant that you could afford the ink of that color printer as well. So I think that was the first milestone sort of a thing that I knew that internet existed. And back those days, we used to use internet. I mean, I used computers only for games. So I was a big game fan. I used to have these CDs that you used to buy from the supermarket and put them in the, this thing and play games out of them. So I didn't know that games on the internet existed too. So when I discovered that, and it was a game changer really, because I would come back in my class and tell them, you know what, I played this game, I played that game. And they would be like, oh, you're all amateurs. The new games in the market are the Sims and so on and so forth. And I think first aspect of internet safety came into question when I was when I was transferring into sixth grade. Is the boys of my class were like, there is something very scandalous on the internet that you can look up, and this is every teen queer person going through their lives as well. Is that look up scandalous things on internet? Oh, nobody will know. And this is the days
Yeah.
when incognito, private browsing did not exist, and nobody knew what
Yeah.
private browsing was. So I remember a classmate of mine telling me, go look up these very particular words or blue films, and I was like, what? What could it
Yeah.
possibly mean? In my mind, as an innocent sixth grader, blue film meant a blue movie. It didn't mean anything else. But when I looked it up, and because we were living in the Middle East that time, so when we looked it up, there was a URL block. So I'm sorry, did I go? Yeah, sorry. So I felt like naturally,
Yeah.
can you hear me? Hello, yes. So
Yes,
I
yes.
felt naturally, this is something that is threatening. That is something that we shouldn't, explore or look further upon. And I was like, okay, okay, this is not what we'll venture further. Little did I know that you had to delete your history for your parents not to come and see that. Because the next thing that literally happened was my parents discovering that I'd looked this up. And they were like, oh my God, what have you done? And it took a lot of hard convincing to tell them that, a boy of my class told me this, and I wanted to see for myself to what the hype was. Then I think as we progressed further in technology came the USB modem type of connectivity, which you could insert, and you had to recharge that. Imagine recharging your internet in a small USB port. And that time it became more this thing. I discovered YouTube later on, and then I discovered Facebook and had my own account. I used to play Farmville. If people here are from the generation of playing Farmville on Facebook and sending energy to each other, I'm from that era as well. So internet became a more prominent part of my life, probably in 9th or 10th grade, when I discovered, you could do more from just playing Farmville and using Facebook. There are more features to it. There are more, ways of doing things. But we'll come further how that also threatens our safety. As young and naive we do not know the harms of it. We do not know what, it's all Farmville sharing energy and all giggles and laughter, followed by the trolling behavior that soon will ensue. So that was basically my journey. I think I really like talking about it too, because the generation that came after 2005 or 6, like if I tell my juniors about it, that look, I came from a generation like this, they're like, can't relate. Because we grew up in this thing that where you had internet readily accessible to you. You had Wi-Fi was a concept that was unheard for us. So when I came to know there is something called as Wi-Fi and you can connect, I was like, oh my God, magic. Like, it's not even science, it's like black magic. So yeah, I could kind of summarize that is how internet has been for me from back then to
Yeah.
back now. I mean, progressing each day.
Each day. So when you were there on the internet, and I'm sure that you made your Facebook account like somewhere around 16, 17 years of age, right? When you began first
13,
into
14,
internet? Oh, wow.
13, 14. I'm quite young.
Okay, so how did you like interact first? Or like did the internet cause some kind of opening in you or questioning in you or introspection in that sense at a very young age?
I think it kind of put this question of curiosity wherein you're like, oh my God, I can now interact with the world. I can now make friends through the internet. Like Club Penguin was a thing back my days. Like
Yeah.
we used to use Club Penguin and make friends, and I had friends all over the world through Club Penguin. And when I came to know it got like, I mean, they shut it down after a few years. That was really heartbreaking. But I think it not just throws that curiosity, but also like what more can you do with the internet? How further can you go, and are there any limits that by which you have to say that, okay, now this is the end point to it. Now we stop, or now we draw boundaries and say, now this is enough internet for the day. Like the comment people pass, right? If they see something disturbing, they say that this is enough internet for the day. And I'm like, where do we draw that boundaries for ourselves? And I think when you're young and you're in the teen age sort of a phase, you do not realize that there is a limit to internet. And if you have if you do not come from a background where parents limit your internet usage, or sort of monitor the pages or content that you consume on the internet, then it becomes more of a question of where do you stop, when do you stop, and how do you stop. So I did have parents that monitored our internet connection usage and this thing. So there was quite a lot of restraints of this much content or this much amount of internet can be used at per day, and it can be used only for these aspects. But then we do realize that your educational surroundings play a major role. You have your classmates tell you new things that didn't exist, and all the wannabe tech geeks will tell you things that don't exist on the, like, they exist but they don't exist for you yet. And you learn techniques and ways to bypass your parental monitoring, and you are like, oh, achievement and log, I'm able to do this, and I'm able to do that. I think that for me wasn't a thing, because even though my classmates were into the aspect of doing things that were URL block in the Middle East, I still had that consciousness of realizing that, okay, back in 5th grade it landed up me in a lot of trouble. I wouldn't really want to repeat that incident. So I had that awareness at least till like 7th grade. After 8th grade, a lot of things changed, and but at least till 7th grade, internet in our house still remained under constraints. It was only used for school projects, and by that I meant my sister sitting with me and browsing the Google together. So me having a Facebook account was a secret as well. I mean, I made it probably in 7th grade ending 8th grade. I mean, I had a Yahoo account which said that cool teenager with my birth date. I'm like, and I felt like, yo, people have like their real names, but I have like cool teenager or something like that on Yahoo, and that account lasted for a lot of years. So I do remember it. I mean, I think on my Skype account it still exists as one of the accounts that was registered for Skype, and I was like, wow, like that is an awakening of its own. That is a journey of its own.
Okay. With that, I think the one question which I have is that you have opened yourself up and your queerness to public and to your friends and to your family. And when you do that, there's a lot of toxicity which people throw at you. How do you deal with that kind of, say, hate speech or trolling, or even in general, say, stalking on the internet?
Okay, so there's a reason why my Instagram profile is private, just to prevent that stalking from happening. Is I accept requests only from people that I closely know. Even if I don't know them, I check with the other person that is following them to see whether or not they're a legit person. Second of all, I feel like, okay, I'm only out to my friends and close ones, not my family really, but I do get the question of, how about the trolling and the hate speech and so on and so forth. So I've not explicitly dealt with that yet as of now, but I do feel that, in coming up ages or years, or with the current scenarios that are evolving around us, that might be a possibility, or even after this live, that there might be a possibility somebody will have something hurtful to say, or something that is triggering to say. And I feel like all of these points come from a space where they want a reaction to this. Yes, so the reaction that they want, so they feed on this reaction. Their basic idea is that the more they are putting these trigger points away, the more reaction they want. By simply not giving them this reaction, I get all the satisfaction and power to ignore them. That is what I've done all these ages, is that I do not react to people. Even if they say very hurtful things, I'm like, okay, let's move on. Next, what do you have to say next? And I explicitly remember this one time that I did. I took a page. Took over a page last year. And it was a feminist page that had taken over. I don't want to name them right now because they're not activated right now. But so when I took over the page, I did see a lot of DMs that targeted me and said that, whatever I'm doing is incorrect and wrong. And the page itself started receiving a lot of hate. And when I did a live, I did see that a lot of people were not very kind. They were very hateful. And I realized that there has to be an origin for all of this. And the origin has to be something, if it is not trolling, if it is hate speech, it is all, feeding on that reaction. They need a reaction out of you. And the more reaction you give, the more reasons they have to, blame you for what you have done. Like victimize the hell out of you and themselves and say that, oh, we were just joking, oh, all in good sense, oh, all in this thing, freedom of speech. They use all these technological terms to justify themselves and say that, all in good this thing, oh, it's a little harmless fun and so forth. So I have learned that the art of, dealing with all of this is just not giving a reaction, just not giving a damn. No matter how hurtful it sounds, there are times that I do feel like, giving them a bloody response. So I've learned this art where I okay them. If not scenes over them, I'll be like, okay. The most hurtful thing that I've realized or damaging is a okay. Single okay can damage. It can destroy economies, I believe. It's that hurtful to people, because an okay doesn't really mean that I care. Neither does it show that I'm really gonna respond. So they get more agitated by that and they want a response. So say they try giving you another question, and then I'm just like scene zone then, and then I don't respond. So that is my way of saying that I really don't care what you have to tell me. And thank God my profile is private. And I think it's also around perceived notions of gender and sexuality. So if people see my account right now, they'll see that Duha is written with a she and they, but they assume that the person speaking right now goes with pronouns like he and him. And because they appear cis male, and that isn't true for me. I mean, that itself is another trigger point for people, right? So you have your intersex phobia, your transphobia, your homophobia, and queerphobia stemming from these notions that people are meant to appear a certain way. And unfortunately, there are influencers out there, or influencers or influential queer people out there who have made that sort of a trajectory or a way of viewpoint. This is how queer people are supposed to look like. This is how non-binary people are supposed to look like. This is how intersex people are supposed to look like. And that is very harmful notion to anyone who's closeted, anyone who is trying to discover themselves, because then that sets a standard for themselves which they do not have or cannot cultivate or cannot foster in themselves, because it is expensive to be you as well. I mean, have people seen the ridiculous amount of skincare products that influencers use, or these brand deals that they get, to show that they have been using these products from like lifelong, and it's very harming. The culture is very harming. So I believe like that is also a stem point for right wingers and trollers, and even people from the left wing community too. That there is a lot of rampant, hatred from both the right, left, centrist, whatever group or political ideology is out there. And I think the simple way to go about is not to give them the reaction, because they are waiting for that reaction. They want that reaction to sprout out of you. And the more reaction that you give out to them, the more they get into the trolling part of it, the more hatred they feel towards you, and the more hatred you feel towards them. So I think I have faced this particularly on a dating website. Again, don't want to name what dating platform, but this one person, I remember they were being super hateful and they were body shaming me constantly. And I just told them one thing. I'm like, this is your space to talk, vent out, share anything that you would like to. And they were like irritated by my kindness. They're like, don't be so kind to me. I'm like, no, now is the point that I become very kind to you and extremely courteous to you. So I started doing this. I would like, they would saying something hurtful and I was reverting back with something nice. And they finally got so irritated that they blocked me. So I was like, yay, victory for me. That is a big way of how I took control of the situation for myself. And I would tell the same thing to, anyone who would wanting to seek out, how do you walk away from not giving a reaction, is that you just walk away once. I mean, there is a lot of trauma attached to it, that, and no, that's not a good thing, like trauma made you kind, sort of a this thing, it's like, yeah, it made me kind, but I don't want anyone else to go through that. Yeah, that, fuck that toxic positivity where it says that, oh my god, trauma is making you nice and kind. No, I didn't wish for that, and I don't want that, kind of did not want that for myself. But here we are dealing with it, and I think the way of going about it is like not giving it any reaction or any sympathy or any sort of reciprocation that people want to feed upon. And we do have a delete option. We delete it and we go and listen to music as we want to. So I do that sometimes when I get inboxes that ask me for like pictures and all, and I'm like, okay, we'll delete them all together one day, and then I go back and listen to who's here, and I'm like, yay, music is good. Or I eat something up to just to clear my mind out of it. It does come haunting to me some days that, okay, there is this net safety that I've created for myself may not last for a long time. There might be days where I might have to, deal with accounts tagging me, and that has happened with me once. And I do not know who was this, but I got tagged in some right-wing page, and they said that I was spreading hate and misinformation. I was like, hate and misinformation about what? I don't even post anything that is very political motivated, for safety purposes. And then I realized it was my username. They got triggered with my username. My username is one of the best usernames out there. I got freaking complimented by Blair Imani that I've got the coolest usernames out here on the internet. And this person was triggered by my username because it said Penguin Booty. And they're like, this person is spending misinformation about their booty being of that of a penguin. And I'm like, that makes absolutely no sense. What are you trying to imply here? So I think that safety barrier that we create for ourselves also has to be kept accounted for, and we need to check up whether or not we have, whether or not we have allies. Or when I meet allies, I don't meet cishet people being allies. I meet people who will stand in solidarity with us, people who will amplify and repost the messages that we are sending out on the internet as SOS, or anything that requires attention of people, because that really helps on the internet, I believe. Yeah, okay. I think I've overspoken that much, way too much.
No, completely not. This is your stage, so it's completely fine. You're going brilliant. I think one question which stemmed from your previous answer was dating applications. I think in that respect, I want to ask you, there are a lot of incidents which we get reported and which we hear around about how intimate partners and catfishing happens on the dating application, social media also. When such incidents happen, maybe with you or your friends, or in general as well, how do you think you should deal with it?
Okay, good. Interesting question, because I've got catfished once for money. Actually, not once, twice. And I was very naive back then, so I didn't know how to deal with the situation. But thankfully, I did get my money back. And it was through untraditional means, but I did get money back because it was a lot of money. It was like around 2,000 to 3,000 rupees. So interesting story to that was I had sort of met this person, and we met up, and they said that they were going through some financial troubles, and the way they made sure that was appeared in their situation is that they took me to an idli dosa place rather than taking me out for coffee, by trying to say that they can only afford idli and dosa at that time. So me being a very naive person took sympathy and on them, and I was like, okay, here's the money that you require. But this had happened twice, and then somebody that I know closely told me that you are getting catfished, and not just like in their appearance, but they're not being 100% honest to you. Ask them when are they going to return your money back. And so when I started doing that, they started ignoring me. And this person was a lawyer, so they were like, you know what, we are going to get your money back. And so though they got in touch with this person, and they spoke to them, I think threatened them as well with a legal notice and stuff. And that's how I got my money back. And that was an interesting thing, because then I was like, oh, okay, maybe internet is not so safe after all. So, all these realizations come. So one thing is that I've learned over the years of being on dating apps is that you have to verify the person. You have to verify the hell out of them. Like, you have to verify if they have a social network, if their name appears on Truecaller. If you have Truecaller, please take up Truecaller subscription, like roughly 35 rupees per month. Search them up on Truecaller, and if they appear as a legitimate contact, make sure your friends also know about them. If they are meeting them, share your location, share their number, share everything, their images. I even go to the extent of Googling their image, if it is taken somewhere from the internet that I've not seen the image before. So I do that as well. I also ask them for a video call, even though I am not comfortable with video calls generally, unless it's family or friends. But ask them for a video call, and if they hesitate, I have my cue there and then itself. Because a video call is no different than meeting in person. We are just going to be apart from screens. And if you're going to meet me in person, why are you uncomfortable meeting me on the phone? Yeah, I understand people have anxieties, because I have them too. I wouldn't be very comfortable, but then again, I do want to verify if it is really you. If not a video call, I ask them to send a recording of themselves, because I do that. And I even though dating profiles do offer you this option of verified profiles, it still does not mean that profile is verified. I've found that people who have verified profiles are also not really themselves. You still can get catfish through that. So word of caution is that immediate or instant anything is not a safe option. It's a no. So, talk to them, drag conversations for a while, talk about very things that do not make sense, to, divert and see how it works out, how it pans out. Because I think people, when they are at their lowest, they think that, this temporary relief that they'll have it with meeting a person might solve whatever they are going through. But we do realize that in the age of internet, that that is quite scary. Now that the given present situation, it is not quite safe to venture out alone that way. Or if you're doing that, please let your friend know that, and let your friend be there nearby. And I've done this before, that I went out with a friend and I told them I'm going on a date. So they actually sat on the opposite table, and the date was pretty bad. So they were there to rescue me. So that was a win-win, because they literally passed through my table and they're like, "Oh, hi, Mohammed. Nice to meet you." And I'm like, "Hey, girl, can we leave?" And I just literally walk out with them. So that helps. So if your friend is free and you can afford to do that, you should do that. And if not, you're not able to do that, please let them know your whereabouts, and at least 2 to 3 people that you can trust and know that you're out on a date or something, or anything this. And then that goes same for hookups as well. I mean, if you're hooking up, please do check your surroundings. If you're hooking up in their house, please do look out for any hidden cameras, or their phones inclined in certain positions, and if there are any webcams nearby, or if anything that is it's good to inspect their surroundings as they do for ourselves. I mean, you can, when they come over to your place, you can let them know that you don't have anything that is recording worthy, or not that they are allowed to record you in your space as well. And I mean, if it is consensual, yes, go for it. But again, I believe that there are harms to that, and there are problems to that as well. Because we do realize, even if it is consensual, it is still very dangerous when it comes to breakups and stuff like that. So I believe that fear lingers. So hence people, wouldn't want to, I mean, at least I wouldn't want to get into that situation where I'm, being recorded without my consent, or with my consent either. I'm still not very okay with that. So I think that is one big pointer to look out, is the surroundings that you're at. And if they live in a very shady locality, run. Literally run. Do not even enter. I don't care if that person will block you, or blame you for anything. If they live in a shady locality, or if they live in some place that seems safe, and your gut tells you that this area does not look very safe, book an auto or run back to a bus stop. Do not take the risk of being there. You do not know what is waiting for you inside. Even if that person seems very legit, they have done video calls, they have sent you their recordings, you do not know what is waiting behind those doors. So that is what I've learned in my journey of internet dating and this thing, is that we have to be extremely careful and cautious with the people we interact, the people we, with the political happenings right now, we have to be extremely careful with people and their ideologies. And I'm kind of grateful for that with dating apps, is that it allows you to tell you, what are your ideologies. At least Bumble does that. Bumble tells you whether or not you're centrist, right-wing, apolitical, left-wing, and so on and so forth. And if I see someone who is apolitical on Bumble, I'm like, no, not happening. Either. So I've even written that on my profile, that apolitical people are you. And I remember matching with majority people who are apolitical. And then, and if they are good looking, I'm like, this is a bummer, I'm like, shall we give this a chance? Then I'm like, no, we will be heartbroken in the end, so we'll not take that risk up. So if your dating app allows you to do that, you should take up that. And if you have support systems that you can rely on, like a therapist, a safe space, and so on and so forth, please let them know that you are, venturing out at these hours, and you're going to be meeting this person. If you can share their pictures as well, that also should be great. I think that's all I have from my side to share about dating apps for now, at last.
I think that was really good. I mean, it covered all the bases, and thank you, the people like you are coming up and speaking for all the others who are just joining this, this new age of internet and this social life and everything. So it's great to even have some pointers for what to do, what not to do. With that, I think one last question which I have from you is about OTT platforms.
Okay.
How do you think that they are working towards queer inclusivity, and do you think there can be any changes with respect to the persona they show of queer persons?
Okay. All right. So, if you look down 5-6 years earlier to the content that was shown on OTT platforms like Netflix, for example, you can barely see any queer representation. Like, it was there, but it was from a very white person point of view. And white person point of view, anything is very damaging. Very damaging is because it is erasure of anything that is Black, Indigenous, people of color voices. And I believe that to, sort of decolonize from that is that you need voices that are biopic. But again, with biopic voices, you also have erasure of the, marginalized people. You have erasure of minority people. You have erasure that comes from financial background. You have erasure that comes from a form of, this is very stereotypical. So I think content now is, it is sort of adapting to the way people are, the people, to the Gen Z, Gen X, and to the millennials as well. But I believe there's a lot of room for improvement with, we can take an example of India itself. And the sort of, I think this recent movie called Blue Cobalt, which was, a very mixed reviews, because very triggering for me when I watched it. And apparently the book is very different from the movie, is what I heard. So I feel like there are aspects, or there are parts. I don't want to critique the movie because I'm who critique, but there are parts which or Indian content creators represent are very stereotypical to the queer community. Like, they show that, okay, feminist is defined in a certain way, masculine is defined in a certain way. While we know that all of that can be very fluid, for example, non-binariness, according to some, is if someone wears a nail polish or lipstick. According to some, it is not like that. It is something else. If Ayushman Khurrana, if Ayushman Khurrana wears nail polish, so people like, oh my God, breaking gender stereotypes, breaking masculinity role. Also, this person is non-binary. So it's dangerous to have those assumptions. Yes, a person wearing nail polish can be non-binary as well. But then again, setting any kind of expectations or norms to how gender non-conforming, gender fluid, non-binary people is harmful, unless and until that person tells themselves that this is how they want to do it. And I think the self-obligation that people have, it's totally up to them. what we look at when we are sort of focusing in queer movements today, at least in the intersex queer movement of India, is we are looking at body autonomy and self-determination. This is one of the integral movements that we sort of focus at. And we look at, when we talk about body autonomy and self-determination, we see that it is always hindered by people who are cis, people who are not intersex. So even if you do have OTT platforms talking about representation, it not always, at least, it might sometimes come from people who have not experienced any of that, or people who are not queer, or people who are not neurodivergent. Like, for example, if they're making something on neurodivergence, usually the writer or the content creator will be a neuroatypical person, and that is harming. That's a very harming, what do I say, notion of neurodivergence. Because what does a neurotypical atypical person really understand about neurodivergence? What do they know about depression? What do they know about like I like how they always conflate depression with like sadness, and they're like, oh, don't be sad, like, here, have a cornflakes, like, have Amul dude, like, yeah, you'll feel okay, like, don't be sad. Here's a motivational quote for you. Good morning, because, like, yeah, the world is running and you should be too. And I find all of that rooted so much in ableism. And it is worse when queer people do it, because, like, that this is something rooted in ableism, and something that is rooted in anti uh, disabled movements, and something that is not something that even you cannot relate to, but you move along with the wind because you have to, because you believe that okay, capitalism is the way how it is, and with the structures and things that bind us together, that is around us, it prompts us to believe that okay, this is the way, this is how it is supposed to be meant, and this is how it is supposed to happen. And you just move along with the wind, and that is how OTT platforms have also gone along with. I mean, to begin with, I stay very neutral with that, because I like some of the shows and their representation, but in my mind, that representation is quickly hampered when I start looking at different angles of political identities. To look at caste and class structures for the movie Blue Cobalt itself, you can look at certain aspects of it being very, caste protective. And when you say it's a good movie, and you do not want to attach any political identities to it, or want to attach any political uh, labels to it, then that is a red flag for me, because all and everything that we do is political, and our existence as minorities itself is very political. And in this notion to remain apolitical as a political person is a very difficult thread to walk through. Like, you want to be safe, but you also want to voice out your oppression. How do you do that? And how do you remain safe in those structures? And how do you navigate structures that call you out for remaining silent? How do you because I've received a lot of criticism from my queer friends for being silent on certain issues, and I tell them that, are you going to be my lawyer, or are you going to fight for me if I am taken away from you? Or are you going to say that more power to you, Mohammed, from your Instagram page, and hopefully see me alive one day? How is your amplification really going to make any difference to my existence? How is it going to protect my identity? How is it going to stand up for me? So we see that all that OTT representation is doing is a sort of allyship. And I think we do not require that allyship. We need solidarity. We need actions. We need something that is that will say that, okay, I am condemning this so-called notion, but I'm also on grassroots level creating a change, or causing a change to happen. For example, you have the Decorian 2019 Trans Act. Now, there were few movies that came up after that, and there was this very horrid movie called Lakshmi Bomb that a lot of people voiced out for their transphobia. But you think, like, they wrote letters on letters asking the movie creators, and they called for social boycotts and so on and so forth. But yet there were a lot of queer people who went and watched and said the movie was inspiring. So we see that, the allyships that OTT platforms is creating is catering only to a subset. It's catering only to a viewership that appreciate such kind of content. It does not cater for the marginalized. It does not cater for their experiences. Even if it does cater for their experiences, it is not portrayed by a character who's marginalized. It is not portrayed by a person who has seen the worst of all. It's not catered by, let alone intersex representation in OTT platforms. There is nil. Nobody talks about intersex representation because nobody knows intersex people exist in India. They constantly conflate us with trans identities, confidently put us in the moment and consider that transgender and intersex people are the same thing. And that is why we had to have a platform like IHRI, Intersex Human Rights India, is a platform to sort of clarify that and tell that, okay, you can be trans and intersex, but it's not the same thing. It's like literally not the same thing. You sure can have that as your identity, but it is confidently confidently misinterpreted, and that leads to our erasure in India. And unfortunately, because of that erasure, we do not get media visibility. I can literally name at least, I think, one or two persons in India who are working on intersex visibility, but they don't get platforms to show, what do you say? Portray their content or stream their content, because you don't get people who are willing to what do I say this fund the work or fund the projects itself, because all of those are very, very secondary when it comes to representation. I know of someone who wanted to create an intersex documentary on Indians in India, and when they approached a certain media house in Bombay, they were told that oh, these people are very rare. I don't think that anyone would want to watch a documentary on intersex people, because according to Google, intersex variations in India are very rare. So very rare is like 1 in 10 lakh, 20 lakh, and so on and so forth. Well, that's not the truth really. Intersex people are as common as, at least for now in today's definition, they're as common as 10 to 20,000 birds. But again, not recorded. They're forced through a lot of things, and so on and so forth. So that leads to our erasure. But I believe, like, overall, they're doing some sort of visibility, but that visibility is not for us. And visibility is there for people who want to take pride in that visibility. It's there for people who can benefit from that visibility and say that, hey, there is a show that is being created, and it is a show that portrays my identity. Hey, good for you, but what about other people out there? What about the other identities that are constantly in clashes? We're trying to understand. If not, at least intersex people is a far-fetched this thing. What about questioning people? What about people who are asexual, aromantic? What about people who are agender? How do you sort of hold yourselves accountable for that? And hold yourself accountable for this is roughly towards anyone in media. Is like, how do you ensure visibility also, for people who are being constantly erased and left behind? So there is visibility, but there is so much invisibility within that visibility. So there is erasure, but there is also erasure within the erasure itself. Like, you are wiped out, but you are also forgotten. So that's the worst part of it. Being forgotten is the worst part in queer movements. Is that, okay, that people have done so much, but then they forget you. I remember walking last year's Pride with an intersex flag, and literally every third person tapped me on the shoulder and asked what it was, what it represented. And somebody asked me if it was a straight ally flag, and I'm like, are you literally kidding me? Can't you see the colors? Literally, there is literally not even an A on it to show that I'm an ally, So there is that form of, misinformation out there as well. I wouldn't call it ignorance really, but then ignorance in this era is very far. It is very classist to call it ignorance, because people, do not have information, and there is very little information out there. Even if there is visibility that we are trying to create, there are a lot of hurdles that we face. There are a lot of obstacles that we have to overcome.
I have not heard that inclusive answer ever before in any of the panels. Like, you were talking about the real thing, what we completely all of us have neglected over how we portray queer community on the media. Okay, so one last question which I had to ask. I think you talked about this before as well, and then we can end the session. That's about cross-dressing and how you think a person is exploring themselves on the spectrum of gender will be impacted through the cross-dressing and the comical portrayal of cross-dressing done by media today.
I think I'm reminded of one certain actor in Bollywood. I think it is something Bobby something. I don't remember this. Okay, not Bobby what, but this actor that I grew up seeing that would get ridiculed for their feminist, and I think that is another harm that Bollywood or any OTT platform continues to do, is that it associate feminists with a lot of patriarchal notions of being weak, of being a lot of transphobia attached to it as well. There is yes, Bobby Darling. Thank you, Priyanka. Bobby Darling was associated with a lot of feminists and and also this association that queer people are rude, and like some of the movies that I've seen is that they are very money minded and money centric, and all they care is about their businesses. They're not really human beings, but money lending and laundering machines is what this thing. So again, I cannot speak in from from the cross-dressing point of view, because I do not practice the art. But I think I've seen the harassment that people have faced, and I think it's gruesome. It's again with that notion that people appear a certain way, they have to do a certain way, and this is how their gender identity is. And I think people who are into cross-dressing are constantly bombarded with this question if they are transgender or not, if they are if they want to transition to appear in public. And then there are these very derogatory things that soon follow afterwards of that. And it is very unsafe to even think about the consequences they have to go through if they meet people offline. And we see instances of violence and with people who cross-dress, and this is very common and more common in America within the Black community. There's people who are drag artists and people who are into cross-dressing facing a lot of violence. I mean, pretty sure that they're in India as well. But the topic of we don't speak much about that in India, at least. Not within our safe spaces, not within our square circles, not within this thing. In fact, it is looked down upon in our safe spaces. Someone cross-dresses, you do not consider them as a legitimate person. You think that they are a fake persona in the internet. You think that they are seeking attention. You think that their profiles on the internet do not deserve to exist because they are using a fake name. And all of that is very damaging, because I've seen what do I say? I've seen safe spaces on Facebook. I again don't want to name who these safe spaces are, but they explicitly write in their group this thing is that CD is not allowed, CD profile is not allowed, people with real, not real names not allowed, and this constant discrimination and gatekeeping that they do, where they believe that because somebody wants to explore their expression, gender expression, the way they want to do it, is not legitimate in their eye, is very transphobic and gatekeeping in itself. And then we have people who are associated with these spaces, and then who are into organizing events, further gatekeep people by not letting them in, by not letting them, wear the clothes that they want or express the way they want to do it, And the moment people talk about cross-dressing, there is this, this dark clouds of fear looming over them, others, And even at one point, I also had this fear when people spoke about it. It made me very uncomfortable. And it kind of questioned me one day. I was like, why is this discomfort arising? Where is this discomfort arising from? Very important to look at it, because if your discomfort arises from a patriarchal onset of fear of femininity, then you really need to look at the ways misogyny has harmed, form anything in life, and patriarchy has harmed anything in life. Very important. And it also, I think, stems from this question of what is real, what is not. Like, as we know, like drag is a form of expression, and there are a lot of drag artists out there, and I'm not talking the ones that are, on RuPaul's Drag Race. That is another story of its own, but there are a lot of you know biopic, that is Black, Indigenous, people of color, drag artists out there who are not queer. They are very straight. I mean, drag queens and drag kings who do it for the sake of art. It's a form of expression that they do. And why I mean, it's a good question to ask when they say that they are not queer. Why isn't that questioned? Why isn't that not considered as, something that, point of conflict? Do you really think that you're straight? Nobody asks that to straight, to straight drag kings and drag queens. Nobody does that, because there is this confirmation, then there is this association. Oh, in the end, they are all straight. So they're just doing it for the sake of art. But when a queer person does that, it does not become just limited to their art. It becomes all about their identity. And that is very damaging, again, with the notion that, people are meant to appear in a certain way and binaries are meant to appear in a certain way. So that itself is, damaging, and that itself is very harming to notion, to anyone who wants to cross dress, or was into cross dressing. I think I've seen this on dating websites as well, is that a lot of time that there is cross dressing phobia, people writing no cross dressers, because they constantly associate cross dressing and transgender identities, constantly think that it is the same thing, and constantly conflate the same, and think that this is what they are looking for, and this is what they are. And there is a lot of transphobia associated with that as well, with genitalia being involved, and with the set type of clothes that they wear. And to look at the cross-dressing community of India, it's a very there is a lot of class structure to it. There's a lot of class structure to it. There are okay, again, I don't think I'm allowed to name, but there are these organizations, or I think there are these pages or websites that allow people to express themselves, and give them the support and community that they require. But again, all of that comes at a cost of being privileged, being able to access that space, being able to speak good English, or any language for that matter, or being at least English. Let's go with that, because that's the standard. And in India, we know that good English defines good upbringing and schooling and standards and so on and so forth. Very classist notion that that good English can get you through spaces. And I think I've seen that in safe spaces as well, is that good English is a way you get through spaces easily without being questioned further. And if you have little too bad or broke, not bad really, but little, not the standard English, the way people speak, that gets questioned a lot. And that is like, oh, look at this person, doesn't know basic grammar. I think I, as a neurodivergent person, had a lot of difficulty with these two words, then and then, like THAN and THEN. So I had a lot of confusion, what is used where. But that did not impact any of our conversation in safe spaces, because people are like, oh, you speak good English, you have an accent that you can get through, and you can mimic an accent. So I feel like, all of these contributing factors to, all of the expression that we have around us is very influential of its own. All of these fear mongering that goes off, and, that every cross-dresser person is a sex worker, or every, and all that they care is for, money, and all that they care is for, this thing, and the fear of femininity in itself, and the misogyny, internalized transphobia. And there is a lot of internalized misogyny within cross-dressers themselves, because you have these standards again to label. If you have a little bit of hair on your scalp, then you're not a cross-dresser, and if you have a little more toned muscles, then you're not so and so and so forth. So I think all of those notions are very harming to any community that are this thing, and it's time that we move from such harming associations and we outgrow them. We leave them behind. We tell them that, okay, the 1800s called and they want their binaries back. That's literally what we are supposed to do with any of these binaries that exist to, strangle and, pollute our minds with such binaries, because binaries of such kinds are very harmful. They gatekeep and they gaslight and they finally, lead to erasure.
Very well. So I think with that, we've come to the end of the session. Thank you so much for coming to this.
Thank you so much
If you
for
have
having
any
me.
you can go ahead and say.
No, I think I'm really glad, and I'm glad a lot of people join, and I can see hearts being sent. So I feel like there is some sort of validation that is being given to me in form of hearts. Like, okay, people are understanding what's being said, and I'm not just randomly blabbering.
Not randomly blabbering. It was so informative. Like at point, even I was like that. There are some things we need to keep on check. As a woman in a society, you are conditioned with some kind of patriarchy around you, and it has to be like you have to unlearn those things before learning anything new.
Absolutely.
And that is what we are looking forward to. Yeah. Okay. So with that, thank you so much, Mohammed. It was great talking to you, and we'll see you in the panel next weekend.
Thank you so much. Hope to see you next weekend. Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining.